Hi all, welcome to SHOWstudio's live review series. I'm SHOWstudio fashion editor Georgie Evans and I'm here in Milan to round up Autumn 2020 Womenswear. It's been a really great week actually. There's been a lot of really fantastic shows. The big brands have really delivered. Gucci, Prada, Bottega was all fantastic. Those are my top three. And lots of overarching trends and themes, lots of things connecting to each other. Quite a few things that we noticed. Fringing was big for Autumn 2020. We saw it at Prada, Bottega and Ferragamo. Also cinched waists, again at Prada, Bottega, also at Ferragamo and at Max Mara. We had squared toes being a big thing, and also Mary Jane shoes, definitely a trend coming up for Autumn 2020. But lots of overarching themes that connect, as I said. Rather interestingly, there was a little bit of a theme of excess and more is more. We had that at Moschino and Versace, both in very different versions. Moschino was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, referencing Marie Antoinette and Let Them Eat Cake, just this huge idea of fun and layers and richness and grandeur right before the revolution and we all lose our heads, which is quite political when you think about it. Jeremy Scott was saying that it had a very tiny political undertone in reference to the politics going on in America at the moment, but also just celebrating Marie Antoinette and this idea of grandeur and just before something's going to happen and you don't know when that's going to happen. Just quite an interesting, nuanced reference. But the collection itself was brilliant. More is candy pinks and sugars, and it was just infectious, really. Also excess, but in a slightly different way. Less about excess as in overindulgence and more in excess visually with prints and graphics and glitters and merging screens and optical illusions was Versace, the first co-ed show for Donatella. And I think that's also why it feeds into this idea of excess, because you physically have more looks. Rather fantastically, we had kind of his and hers looks as menswear mirrored womenswear, womenswear mirrored men's, lots of slashed looks and colour tones. The first couple of looks, actually, we had Donatella lookalikes in fantastically sharp kick flare suiting, one male, one female. And just that you get a real sense of evening wear and nighttime and cocktails and partying. The closing look was Kendall Jenner in the most fantastic silver dress. Curved top and super mini. Everything at Versace was a little bit mini, which I liked, and lots of chaos prints, faux furs with prints, again sequins on prints, on greens, on neons. Then we've got logos, then we've got in the menswear just fantastic excess, this 80s idea of excess, which again is quite an interesting thing to reference, this 80s idea of feeling flush and covering yourself in faux furs and glitter, but a brilliant collection nonetheless. I think it was a really fun Versace. Moving away from this idea of excess was this idea of a slight escapism. Lots of designers talking about the rat race and feeling caught up in fashion, Gucci being the predominant one. Alessandro Michele was talking about how we have this ritual of fashion and it's almost like our church and we can't help but go to it, and showing his collection in this fantastic round, watching the models get dressed, watching their stylists give them the finishing touches, really allowing us to see the ritual of a fashion week was really fantastic. Gucci was one of the standouts for me this week. Just a brilliant referencing of the menswear, Victoriana, just fantastic. Also with the idea of escapism, not quite as fantastic as Gucci, I will admit, was Max Mara, looking at this idea of nautical escape and how the ocean can be a reference to our emotions, and how, again, fashion can just seem like this never-ending cycle, and how sometimes you just want to escape on a boat. I know I do sometimes. So we had lots of nautical reference in plaited hairs, fisherman beanies, like waterproof hoods tucked into the traditional Max Mara coats. Lots of navy, as you would assume from Max Mara. Also an idea of escapism came from Marni, going down the rabbit hole, this idea of psychedelia escapism. Marni took us into this soft, caverned warehouse on the outskirts of Milan. Everyone was sitting on cushions, and Francesco himself came out in a big rabbit head at the end, getting lost down the rabbit hole, following the right rabbit into Alice in Wonderland, which was really interesting. But that idea of escapism is kind of a counter theme to this excess, both with slight political undertones, I would say. Thinking about excess and the reverse of that, there were a few brands that were looking at slight sustainability angles, not necessarily that this was their statement, their argument definitely wasn't in any press releases, and I don't want to greenwash these brands, but just a few notes of moments that were putting the right foot forward in carbon footprint and sustainability. Marni being a huge contender for that. The entire collection was predominantly offcuts, found fabrics, leathers, mixed with suedes, mixed with silks, patchworked all together to create unique pieces. The actual cut of the garments was really simple, but the fabrications merged together was really fantastic and ornate. I actually came from the Marni Risi this morning, and looking at the clothes up close is just fantastic. The textures created in these fantastic ways, woven together in really traditional ways, mixed with a quite new idea of repurposing offcuts. Done really well. I was at first a little skeptical of the collection, but I'm won over now. Also using offcuts was Paul Andrew at Ferragamo. He'd gone into the archive and was looking at offcuts of leather, found loads and loads of leather, and he tanned them and dyed them in the colours of this Autumn/Winter 20 collection, and made the most fantastic bag, which everyone's calling the trapeze bag, which it definitely hasn't been named yet, but it's in a trapeze shape. It's absolutely fantastic. And some of those leather offcuts featured on shoes and during the collection as well. And not in an offcut sustainability way, but Daniel Lee at Bottega, his entire set was designed to be entirely collapsible, to leave no trace and no footprint. It was screens in a rather empty palazzo on the outskirts of Milan that then projected palaces of Rome, and just transported us to a completely different place, much like fashion does sometimes, as Daniel was saying. But the idea was that it's completely collapsible. Another huge theme over Milan Autumn/Winter 20 was femininity and what that means today. What is modern femininity? How do we reappropriate the cliches of femininity, the typical tropes, the stereotypes of femininity? And when we think of that, we think of, in realms of fashion, we might think of organzas or pinks or beading or fringing, as we've seen a lot of, and both Prada and Fendi tried to reappropriate those. The Prada show was arguably one of the best. It was absolutely amazing, and obviously now we have the news that Raf Simons will be joining Prada, which is rather fantastic. But this Prada collection was absolutely fantastic. Lucia was saying that she'd been taking, again, those organzas, things you would typically associate, florals, prints, embroideries, fringing, beading, everything that you would tarnish with the femininity brush and perhaps negatively, and then merge them with strong shoulders, really cinched waist with thick belts, faux furs, trainers, even the things such as a silk pajama suit with beautiful floral embroideries was given a slight masculine edge, and trying to reappropriate that. And she was saying, just because I would wear these things doesn't make me any less of a strong woman. I'm still empowered. I could still be a CEO. I can still do these fantastic things. Very similar, Sylvia at Fendi was looking at the stereotypical idea of what females would wear in the past. Soft pinks, again, organzas and translucent materials. And then taking that into the future, what do we wear now as women? Again, strong shoulders, really structural shapes. The Fendi silhouette was absolutely fantastic this season. Huge bishop sleeves and structured suede, structured leathers, column waists, which was a big theme for Autumn/Winter 20, was big at Fendi. And again, hinted to this idea of a Roman goddess, which is looking at kind of females from the past and bringing them into the future. Fendi casting was the absolute standout of the season, brought back an incredible range of models. Xiao Wenju, Anna Ewers, Karen Elson, Paloma walked, and that is the precedent I would like to see carried on throughout. I understand it fits with the theme of Fendi this season, celebrating all women from past to future, but I would really like that to be a common theme, a common denominator in all the shows going forward, because it really added such a powerful punch. Also looking at women was Ferragamo, who've been looking at these iconic women and all the qualities they have within them. So on the mood board for Paul Andrew was Beyonce, Nancy Pelosi, Persephone, Wanda Ferragamo herself, and looking at all the different qualities that all these women embody at one given time, referencing Carl Jung's theory of the kind of 7 or 8 different types of women we have, and how we're always those people. So the mystic, the lover, the mother, the huntress, and akin to that. And you saw that again in these column cinched waists, the wide pockets that framed the hips, lots of drawing to typical feminine body moments, but either protecting them or highlighting them with beautiful leathers and dungarees and overalls, or fantastic skirts and bandeaus. Brilliant Ferragamo collection as well, must definitely say. Have to talk about Moncler Genius because it is such an amazing standout on the season. Such a brilliant example of what collaboration can do and how well it does it. And this season we had JW, Rimowa and Matabike, I believe it's called, entering into the Moncler Genius family. Sad to see Pier Paolo go because his designs for Moncler Genius was amazing. but really fantastic to see JW come into the fore. His collection was so brilliant, referencing kind of early 2010 collections and bringing spikes into the fold. The beautiful puffer bag. Simone Rocha did a film with Petra Collins. The presentation of Moncler Genius is such an event here in Milan. There was about 8,000 people, I believe, who came to it. And just seeing all these different rooms, how each designer's interpreted the space, it's just so fantastic. Seeing a designer as amazing as Craig Green or Simone or JW, or Hiroshi, just completely reinterpret the Moncler ideals is so fantastic. So that was definitely a great punctuation throughout Milan Fashion Week. Yeah, as I said, it's been a great week. Well, can't complain. If you want to see slightly more in-depth reviews for each of the brands, head to SHOWstudio's website now, and you can see each of my warblings on each of the brands that I mentioned here throughout the roundup. Otherwise, see you soon, and thank you for watching.